have with us Confidence Staveley, and we're going to have Sumi tell you a little bit about confidence and the topic she's going to be talking about. Over to you, Sumi.
Thank you, Aditya. Confidence is a cybersecurity awareness evangelist, podcaster, ethical hacker, information technology expert, author, and entrepreneur with over a decade's worth of experience in technology. Confidence is a top 50 women in Cybersecurity Africa 2020 finalist, BBC Biz 100 expert, and an external faculty of the FINTECH Institute, Lagos, London, and Toronto. An acknowledgment of her professionalism, influence, and expertise within the African tech ecosystem. She contributes to social responsibilities to CyberSafe Foundation. It is a flagship initiative. No Go Fall Mega is combating digital fraud perpetrated through social engineering by delivering simple, relatable cybersecurity education across Nigeria and beyond. Her organization has saved over $1,000 in losses of Nigerian. She has also authored Africa's first certified cyber awareness book, No Go Fall Mega, the Handbook. Confidence is alumnus of the World Economic Forum, Global Shapers, and has spoken on many global and Pan-African events. Over to you, Ms. Confidence.
Over to you, Confidence.
Thank you so much, Sumi and Aditya. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here.
Thank you.
And I really like what you're wearing, Sumi. I think I want one of those to be sent to me in Nigeria.
Thank you. I'll send you one. Yeah, I'll send you one.
Thank you.
For sure.
So
Thank you.
I bring so much energy from this part of the world, and it's a pleasure to be interacting with this audience. I'm thinking men and women from across the world joining us, maybe predominantly women. And maybe just to do a very quick intro, I'll be sharing my slides really quickly. Okay. So, like I've been rightly introduced, my name is Confidence Staveley, and I'm going to be speaking to you today about the digital hygiene practices, catch and train them young. In my presentation, I'm going to be talking about why this is important for us to start young, and why it's important for us to even talk about digital hygiene best practices in the first place. But before we go on, here's a little something I'd like us to do. While I've just told you which part of the world I'm joining from, please just drop a comment in the chat box. Let me know where you're joining us from. Are you joining us from Asia? What part of Asia? Are you joining us from Africa? What part of Africa? Are you joining us from Europe? What part of Europe? Let's make this very interactive, because I don't like talking to myself. I want to know the people I'm speaking with, and very easily at any point you can drop a question in the chat box, and I will take the question when it comes to the time to take questions. So I don't know if you can see my presentation. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, we can. We can, Confidence.
Okay, great. So yeah, I was just saying, I really didn't wake up this way. Unlike Beyonce and what the general notion is, that I woke up this way. No, I didn't wake up this way. I woke up, I had a toothbrush, I brushed my teeth, had my bath, wore some clean clothes, and every few minutes I was washing my hands because COVID, and all of those other intricacies around my personal hygiene. And this is because personal hygiene is a big thing, and we've heard about personal hygiene from day one. We always are told, we hear daily from when we were children to always keep personal hygiene. And that's why, for example, I said I didn't wake up this way. I woke up, I had to do some personal hygiene practices. But beyond personal hygiene, which we are all used to, there's a new type of hygiene which we need to keep talking about very often as we talk about personal hygiene, especially in COVID-19 times. Now, why is this so important to talk about digital hygiene, like you would talk about physical hygiene? Because we have become progressively an extension of ourselves our version, the version of ourselves physically has become extensively replicated online. So like you have a physical self you need to take care of and make sure that you are clean and make sure that germs do not infect you. That's about the same way you need to take care of your virtual self, which is encapsulated and is captured in your digital self. Now this is expressed through social media, your digital self, I mean. Those identities around you, all of those competing devices combined together are your digital assets. And you need to take care of them just like you take care of your body so you don't get infected by a disease, you don't fall ill, and a disease literally does not find a loophole to exploit and become something else. So that's just about the same way. And we have to keep talking about digital hygiene like we talk about personal hygiene. And yes, we might talk about COVID in a very negative perspective, but for once I want to talk about COVID in the positive perspective, because we have begun to see also very clearly that personal hygiene translates directly to being safe. The same thing applies also for digital hygiene. You know, digital hygiene translates automatically to being digitally safe. So now we can also tell that with the unprecedented adoption of new technologies to our daily lives, I mean, we use computing devices to even check our heart rate on our own, to monitor blood sugar, to communicate with our friends and families across the world, to do several other things, to do business. We trust that someone who is across the world can maybe take on a deal that we've never seen the person and it's for millions of dollars, just because technology is bringing us together and it's actually you know, connecting us and allowing us to live. I see you, Sonam, joining us from London. Welcome. I see Ashwani joining us from Scotland. It's my pleasure to connect here. Oh, I see Subela joining us from Dubai. It's my absolute pleasure. And I see someone joining us from Kenya, from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. I'm so excited to connect with you all. And I hope at the end of this presentation, you will take on digital hygiene best practices and literally have them done in your everyday lives. Now, because of how, you know, technology has become an extension of our everyday living, the health of our devices, the health of our online personas captured in our online accounts have also begun to be affected by our digital hygiene and the state of our digital hygiene. So we need to pay the same attention to our physical selves, pay the same attention to our digital selves and pay to our physical selves in terms of hygiene. Now, I don't know anyone who has used one toothbrush for several years, but then we have people doing unthinkable things on the internet and not really understanding how that translates in terms of our safety. So in my presentation today, I'm going to be really helping people understand how these things tie together by using a lot of examples that tie to our everyday lives. But before we go any further, I want to share a story from my childhood days. I've never shared this in an online forum. This is going to be the first time, but it's going to basically go around with what we're talking about. So when I was a very little girl, when I say little girl, I mean I was maybe 3 or 4 years old at the time. My parents told me, because I loved to have oranges a lot, and the oranges in this part of the world, in Africa, in West Africa specifically, they have so many seeds in them. So by the time you take the orange and you chop it a bit and then you're squeezing it into your mouth, with the orange, the whole orange fruit, as we usually consume it here. We barely consume oranges as just juice. So I would usually just take that and then I'll also swallow the seeds alongside. And my parents tried to teach me that this was the wrong way to consume oranges. So they had to tell me a lie to sort of get me around to stop, having oranges in that way. I'm going to tell you what lie they told me and what effect it had on me. So stay here with this presentation while I speak through the rest of the slides. So digital hygiene, what is digital hygiene in the first place before we go any further? Digital hygiene is the catch-all term for the practices and behaviors related to cleaning up and maintaining your digital world. Just like anything else, maintaining your digital world is very important to being safe and to being healthy. I see you, Monica, also from Nairobi. Welcome. So just like you would need a toothbrush to clean your teeth, you would need a sponge to take a bath, you will need water to do all of that. We also need to do the same thing to our digital partners. Now, very characteristic of this particular picture, I wanted to just talk about this context of women and the role women play in digital safety. I don't know if any of you have seen Wakanda. It's an old movie that made the headlines a couple of years back, and really the role that women play in defense in our society, even in cybersecurity, where there's arguably fewer women in that space, you can tell that women are playing very, very, very key roles in driving defense and driving security best practices. But I want us to extend it past the workplace. I want us to begin to see the role of women in defending organizations, in defending individuals, as past the workplace, as exemplary and as role models that we are, and as influencers in the homes we come from, the homes that we have our siblings, and the homes that we begin to build a family in. If we play that role in multiple fronts, cyber safety begins to become easier to basically maintain. And I think that is the part I really want us to discuss and talk about, because we as women, a lot of us being here as women, we play that multiple role where we are influencers in our society, not just because of the job roles we take, but also because of our shared position of nurturing and of influencing a lot of other people around us. Now, digital hygiene is a crucial first line of defense against new and evolving digital threats. Now, as we go back and forth with different ways that attacks are beginning to go into, or even the old plain way of attacking systems and devices, we've seen that the first way, or the best and strongest way to defend our enterprises, our organizations, and to defend us as individuals really still lies in digital hygiene. It lies with, like I said, the cleaning up, the maintenance of our digital world. Those two keywords, if you don't remember anything, remember that digital hygiene has cleaning up and maintaining. Just like you would sweep you sweep away things around your wardrobe that you do not like, just as you would take care of your body and take away things that you don't want. That's about the same way that it applies. So it's really a very important thing, because if we ignore digital hygiene, then the defense that is supposed to protect our enterprises, which in some cases, like in this Wakanda, was literally a territory, we will begin to open ourselves to old threats. We begin to open ourselves even to evolving threats of any type. But if we take cognizance of digital hygiene, we are better positioned to be safe as individuals and as enterprises. So what do we do to really practice digital hygiene? One of the key tips I have here is updating devices and apps that are on our phones and on our laptops. It's a very easy thing. Now, the key thing around updating devices is that of the software providers or software manufacturers and device manufacturers depend on those updates to be able to install new security functions, to also be able to remediate or to cover up loopholes that exist in the current software. So by the time you do not update your device, you do not update the softwares, you do not update the apps on your phone, on your computing devices, you become automatically open to the kind of attacks that can get through the current state of that application that has already been taken care of by the device manufacturer or by the software manufacturer. So you're literally putting yourself out there and becoming vulnerable to attacks. And we see this very openly. Very recently, the US government is giving a very strong warning and call out to enterprises to update Windows Server, because there's a risk that exists and that threat actors are really using and are really, really leveraging. So it's important that we update our devices on the personal level. It's also important that we update the tools and software to use that work on a personal, on a formal level. Okay, now the key thing also is passwords. Password management is a big deal because it's type of attack that has become very, very predominant these days and prevalent is password stuffing. It refers to, you know, when people just randomly try to guess your password based on a password that's already been leaked and is available in the open. Now, this is hugely successful because people are using and reusing their passwords. This is really bad practice, but that's only because the human brain is limited. I mean, how much can you retain in your brain per time? You would want to maybe at some point have 3 passwords, or that's if you're very good. Some people just have 1 password everywhere. So imagine if Canva is hacked, for example. That means that your credentials harvested from that hack begin to make you susceptible and make you vulnerable to an attack on your Instagram account, to an attack on your work email account, to an attack, you know, imagine an attack on your work email account also means that it's an attack on the organization you work for. So password managers are a way to help you with this, because password managers are literally to money what password managers are to passwords what money what votes are to money. So if you want to store your money, you want to save your money securely, what you do is you put it in a vault. That's the same way with passwords. You will need to store it in a vault, which in this is a password manager, and it helps you with not trying to remember so many passwords. I personally use this tip because all I have to do is remember 1 master password, and then I am fine because my password manager is going to do the rest for me. Another key thing is to turn on multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication refers to you know, making sure that you have to verify that you're who you are by using something more than just a password and username combination. So usually the second level of verification and checking with you that you're actually who you claim you are before you have access to your assets will be something that you are or something that you have. So something that you are could be your thumbprint, so, your eyes being scanned, your face being scanned in the case of a phone and things like that. And then something that you have could be a code sent to your phone. It could be a code generated on an app. But what it makes sure that it does is that it makes it a whole lot harder for you to be hacked. It doesn't mean that sorry about that.
High confidence, all okay?
Sorry about that. I think I had a bit of a choke there. Automatically you become hack proof, but it just means that you will not be a low-hanging fruit. And half the time, this is the key issue. It's important that we make ourselves a whole lot more difficult to be victimized by cyber criminals. And so the key goal is to make that added difficulty, you know, to be brought into power by turning on multi-factor authentication everywhere possible. Another key thing to have as a habit is to always review privacy and security policies and settings on your social media accounts and your accounts generally. I would also like to add on your devices. A couple of mobile phones are beginning to come in that have privacy settings because of the operating system update. If you don't like to be tracked, for example, those privacy settings are available for you to not be tracked and just maintain your privacy. It's also important that you review the privacy policies of the tools that you consume, because one of those times, I mean, very early on when TikTok was released, I was having a conversation with someone, and the person was doing a TikTok video, and I just asked curiously, I said, do you know that this tool actually literally functions like a spyware? And I was breaking down what TikTok collects from the users, and the person was arguing that it's not possible. That's not possible. I can't possibly be having such an app on you. But I'm like, yes, you have such an app, and said it's not possible. The person said it's not possible, and so all I did was I opened the policy, the privacy policy, and then I showed it to the person in the privacy policy that this was clearly stated that this sort of information was collected from you. You know, but that's only because a lot of people don't actually read privacy policies, so it's a problem. Another key thing to always do is to keep your software and all applications up to date. We mentioned that earlier, but I'm just repeating that for emphasis. It's also very important to get into the habit of backups of your files and backups of everything else around you regularly. Now, why backups are important and have become controversial over time, so I'm going to share why that is so. Is backups help you recover really quickly in the event of a cyber breach. So if your organization was attacked, or you were attacked as a person, and you know, maybe your device was infected with a malware, that's a harmful software. What's going to happen is that your device might get wiped to get free of that, for example, or the malware might just have been structured in such a way that it causes so much havoc on your device that the device might have to be reset. And in such an incident, what happens is you're going to lose a lot of data if you do not have a backup. And let's use another example. If your organization, for example, has a website that has no backups, if it is hacked, for example, if there are no backups to fall back on, the time it will take from recovering from that incident, from when it happened to recovering, will be a long time as compared to if you had a backup. So backups are very important. Now, but in the context of malware, of ransomware, like we have seen over time, backups alone as a habit will not save you, because cyber criminals have begun to, you know, before they infect an enterprise or a computer system with the ransomware, and they make it obvious that you've been infected. They first do what is called an exfiltration. This is the current trend. So they exfiltrate your data. That means they take the data that's existing on that system and they put it on their own service. So if you refuse to pay the ransomware, by the way, a ransomware is literally a malware, a harmful software that if it exists on your computing device, automatically encrypts your file, which means it locks your files and asks for a ransom as a payment to be made before access is restored for you on that computing device or on that computing system. Now, in the case where that happens with many enterprises, we have also seen that these cyber criminals have gotten very, very clever. It's okay if you don't want to pay since we've seen a lot of people not want to pay the ransom, they have backups. Okay, the next stage you're going to get to is say, right, you don't want to pay back, right? You don't want to pay the ransom, that's fine. But I can also see that you have come back up, you have a backup, and you've come back to business. That's fine. We are going to release the files that we have of your organization. We're going to release them out in the public. And so because of that need to now shield and stop cyber criminals from releasing these files to the public, organizations are then forced to pay the ransom to the cyber criminals. So you see that backups alone are not exactly the only habit to have. It's important that you have that and use it in conjunction with other cyber hygiene or digital hygiene best practices. Because for a lot of the ransomware attacks, they have occurred because of lack of cyber hygiene or lack of digital hygiene best practices that has left a loophole to be exploited by the cyber criminal. Another key thing to note as an individual is to get into the habit of protecting your connection to the internet. A cyber criminal can exploit a non-protected connection to the internet to do a whole lot of harm, to collect information, to stay in the middle and collect information, to get unauthorized access to your information also on the network. So it's important to use tools that protect you, like a VPN. It's also important to understand safe browsers and safe connections. Safe browsers being the best, use great browser softwares, and also ensure that they are the latest versions. And when you're on the internet, be wary of websites that do not have a HTTPS mark. Now, a HTTPS mark means that connection to that server that you're obtaining your website and viewing it from is secure. That means information that is transmitted from your point of accessing that online resource to where that online resource resides is going to be done securely. Well, that might signal some sort of security, it's important to also note that it does not confirm that the source which you're getting that information from, that's the server you're communicating with to get that information from, is actually clean. It doesn't also confirm that that server is actually belongs to an organization that it says it belongs to. So because we've seen that cyber criminals are also getting very smart, and in process of scamming people and defrauding people, they can buy lookalike domains and begin to impersonate trusted organizations. And so you will be logging onto that website thinking you're logging onto a trusted website, and then find out that that is not the case, because this organization is literally masking themselves to go about whatever they're doing. So it's important to note that while HTTPS is a safe connection, it does not assure you that the connection, the destination of that connection is actually secure and good for you to put in your banking details or to generally interact with them. It's also very important to be aware of phishing attacks. Now, what is phishing? Phishing is a type of social engineering that has to do with deception. So it's manipulating or deceiving someone to give unauthorized access to confidential or sensitive information. This can happen in the form of clicking of a link, downloading a harmful attachment, or interacting with is a very, very high source of attacks across the world, big organizations, individuals. And why phishing is so effective is because email has become our main means of communication. I mean, like this event, for example, that we're currently attending, I received a lot of emails around this event and has been our major source of communication. And that's the same way that, because cyber criminals know we spend more time on our emails, they're also leveraging that platform to commit crime. It's also because he uses deception, deception based on the things we trust, deception to gain trust, deception to access information, deception to gain access and begin to increase their food days and are continuously exploiting it. Now, for digital hygiene habits also, it's important to learn about end-to-end encryption. Now, what is encryption? Encryption is literally safeguarding by locking your devices and your data to ensure that only someone who has authorized access will have access to your device and your data. In the instance of maybe that device falling into the wrong hands, that will act as a protection. So, for example, if your phone was stolen, if your computing device was stolen, it's encryption that's going to make sure that if the person gains access, the person can't have access to your files. The person can't have access to anything that will be damaging or or will put you in a place of harm. Also, it's very important that we all make all of this a habit, because while we can talk about digital hygiene best practices from today and tomorrow, there will be real life incidences. Life is going to happen on us, and we are going to forget about those things if they have not become habits. So I'm going to tell you the little story that my parents told me that made me stop having oranges and also consuming the seeds alongside. And then I'm going to tie it to how we can definitely have these things as habits, and basically be able to help our organizations and help our colleagues inculcate the right digital hygiene best practices. So when life happens, when in the middle of being busy and doing office work and doing our day-to-day chores and activities, our day-to-day running around, we are still reminded, and we are so used to doing the right thing that we are no longer low-hanging fruits for cyber criminals. Talking about, we said a couple of things that we should do. We should use password managers, we should look at phishing emails. We should on two-factor authentication and all the other things that we've spoken about. The problems with digital hygiene, while everybody may accept that, yes, it is something that we need to do. So why isn't everyone turning on two-factor? Why isn't everyone having strong passwords and making sure their passwords contain upper and lowercase characters, and there are at least 8 to 12 characters in length, and and they're very strong and very difficult for cyber attackers to get through? It's because life can happen, and if people don't make them as habits, then they'll simply not be bothered. So like my slide says here, that lots of people agree with digital hygiene and want to do something about it, but simply don't have time or can't be bothered. So how do we make them inculcate this? How do we make them take this on very seriously? And I will now tell you my story. So my parents told me that, because they knew that it was important to me, I always envisaged myself as a beautiful lady that was going to change the world, I was going to do this, I was going to do that. I was quite a very outspoken child, and they knew that I was quite a very strong character of a person. So they knew that they needed to to teach me this habit of not, or correct this habit of not having oranges with the seeds. So they told me the story that if I have the oranges with the seeds, that the seeds are going to grow, they're going to be planted in my tummy, and they're going to germinate and grow out of my body from my head, and I'll become an orange tree lady. And so I would imagine, how would I be walking around as an orange tree lady? It would be so awkward in my class. So what I did was, from that day on, I refused to have oranges with seeds in it. But then one day I made a mistake, and I had the orange, and a seed mistakenly slipped through my throat. And so I came home crying, and I told my parents that this is what had happened, and that would I become an orange tree lady? And they said, no, if I pray very fervently to God, that I was not going to become an orange tree lady. So I knelt down and I prayed so fervently that day. And it still is in my memory because of how strong this was. It was up until when I became an adult, I'm like, this was a plain lie. My parents literally lied. And I'm not saying you should lie to get people on the cyber safe side of things, but I'm telling you that story to just say how important it is to make cybersecurity and digital hygiene very relatable by using what is important to people. So the people you're speaking to about digital hygiene in your workplace, what is important to them? Is it making money? Is it keeping money? Is it staying private? What is important to them? Make that digital hygiene best practice translate to something that's very relatable to them, and they can then see the benefits and begin to take on cyber hygiene or digital hygiene best practices and make it a habit in their everyday living. It's also important to catch them young. I mean, like the story I just shared, if my parents had told me that story right now in my 30s, there is no way in the world I'll believe them. But because they told me really young, I took it on hook, line, and sinker, and I was running with that habit. I had built a habit immediately of not having oranges and allowing the seeds slide through my throat. And it only just took a slight mistake for me to feel like I had slipped. And when I slipped, I was very conscious of the fact that I had slipped because it had become a habit for me. So it's important for us to sort of have people that are young around us take it on and also have it as a habit now. It doesn't have to be, we can start at a very, very young age. It doesn't have to be to when people are in their 20s. I mean, it'll be great if I begin to see in primary schools, in secondary schools, that children are actually taught about cyber hygiene best practices, because they'll grow up into adults that actually have two-factor and don't think about it as an inconvenience, who would actually take the time to install an encryption software on their computers, who would actually take the time and not see it as a chore to actually update the software on their computing devices. So I think, we're catching them young, we're able to influence stronger and make the best practices become habits. It's also important to automate things. Now, I always say that if you want to help people take on new habits, make it a whole lot easier for them to do it. And now this is the place of things like password managers. Password managers will automate helping you with managing your password securely. They'll also fill your forms for you. They'll help you remember so many things that you won't have with your normal memory. actually be able to remember them. So it will literally be, it's actually great to always automate as much as possible to help people sort of get in the game with digital hygiene. Another great thing to do is to make engagement around digital hygiene best practices be quick, be useful, and be actionable. What will people remember? What will people, will they be able to see the benefits of digital hygiene straight on from the get-go? How would you make it very, very easy for people to relate what you're saying? So this is about it for my presentation, and I'm hoping that you've learned a thing or two from my presentation, and I'm open to taking questions at this point. Thank you.
Hi, Confidence. Confidence, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that presentation. Now let's open up the stage to questions from the audience. Guys, do you have any questions for Confidence? Confidence, you can stop your screen share. Okay, so Confidence, so you're talking about using password managers, right? How secure are password managers? Because
password managers
in one place for you. So how secure are password managers?
Okay, there is nothing that is actually foolproof. I want to put that disclaimer out there. But password managers are a whole lot more secure than other forms or habits around storing passwords. I think I really want to highlight that. And most password managers have taken extra measures in terms of how they store the passwords, how they become accessible in the event of a breach, what gets to happen. That's not all all those measures are not measures you would take on your own private side of things, and which are already taken care of for you. So that's very key. It also helps with the fact that you will not be burdened or feeling like you have to remember all these things, which puts you at more risk than actually using a password manager. So I find that if you have just one password to remember, it's a whole lot more practical. But if it's a whole lot more practical because you're using it with password managers, which means you have one very strong password, and then that one very strong password is used to protect your other range of passwords that are auto generated for you if you want in some cases, which means that you will always have your password strong that use across board, and will also ensure that you don't have password reuse issues, which you said is an issue that is actually really causing quite a lot of data breaches across the world.
Okay. So the next question is, all of us use Google on a daily basis, and a lot of us use Android phones. Now, Google collects almost every single thing that we do on our phones. Like if you log into your Google privacy and your Google settings, you see your entire history stored over there. Now, how secure is all of this information on Google servers? Because literally they have your entire life stored on their servers.
Okay, so there's that conversation around privacy and the benefit of using certain services. So people get to weigh these two things. So is privacy important to me as compared to the benefits of using the service? And interestingly, for Google, the benefits sort of are always lopsided for the way users see it. But there are a couple of measures people can put in place. One of them is to try and always browse the web incognito, and maybe not also use, you can use browsers that protect your privacy. Definitely not Chrome. If you want to really protect yourself, those are some of the measures you can put in place. On your phones, you can also want to check all the other tracking tools, automatic tracking tools that are put there, and not allow them out from time to time. Clear your cache and clear the cookies. And then be selective around the cookies you actually accept when you browse certain websites. So those are some of the measures you can put in place to protect yourself and your privacy. I think you have to definitely weigh what you're putting out there. Is it worth allowing yourself, and is it worth losing that much privacy over, and then you use the service if you want to.
Okay, great. Okay, and let's come back to Android phones. Now, the difference between iOS and Android primarily is iOS is completely owned and controlled by Apple. So all of the apps have to be approved by Apple. But when you come over to Android, you can download an APK file for the Android phone from a browser and install it on your phone. Now, to bypass this, Google launched Google Play Protect to ensure that all of the apps were primarily only from Google's Play Store. But Google, from time to time, constantly keeps removing apps from its own Play Store itself for violating privacy concerns. Now, what are some tips that you would give all our listeners, all our participants on what are the best practices while downloading approved apps from the Play Store itself that possibly turn out to be spyware?
Okay. One of the key things I always say people should be on the lookout for is reviews. So look out for that app. Usually, when it's not an app that's very, it hasn't gained let's say trust because of its user base vouching for it. I would say be very wary and just be on the lookout. Don't use those apps yet because there are very high chances that, because a lot of people haven't used it, it's not been analyzed by researchers, cyber researchers, it can be an issue. Also, before you download that app, do a simple Google search. I find that even for a lot of scams, if people just searched, some keywords from that particular email or search, that particular app, you might find some very useful information. So find out if what people have to say about that app, and maybe what other alternatives if you're not sure that app is secure. I think that will go along with the guiding you, even when downloading from the Play Store.
Okay. Thank you for that answer, Confidence. I think we're done with the questions. So once again, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a very insightful talk. Thank you so much, Confidence. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Aditya.